Alright guys, so it's Monday evening, about 5:45, and I've kind of made a decision, right, on the firefish in quarantine. It keeps on jumping, and even though I put that piece of acrylic there on Saturday morning, now it's just jumping and hitting the acrylic. So it's good that it's not jumping out of the tank anymore, but now we're just getting in a situation where it's hurting itself, and I've even heard it flopping around in here whenever I'm in the other room. So it's just way too skittish in this bare tank, and that's maybe kind of my fault. Like I should have, I've had them before. I know how skittish they are. I didn't quarantine them because at that time I wasn't quarantining, but I kind of should have keyed into, hey, this fish might not do so great in like a bare quarantine. Even though this has got tons of algae, it's just not gonna really emulate even like an established tank or like a natural environment. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer it over to the 37, which is right there behind me. The water test's alright, right? It's been relatively stable. It's not perfect, but I'll just have to feed a little bit lighter. And, it is what it is. I think it'll be okay. We've had these guys in quarantine for 11 days, which is about a third of what I had planned, but in my experience, most of the time, velvet is going to show up pretty much immediately. Right, clownfish, maybe it kind of holds off a little bit, or damsels, just because they are, and gobies too, if they have that super thick slime coat. But for like the year-old grandma, the blenny, I would have expected that to show up pretty quick. Ick, I would have expected to show up in the first week. It can show up later, but it depends on the strain, right? So taking a risk, but they have been dewormed at least. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that just because I think if I don't, I'm gonna end up losing the fish to stress. And I guess I am kind of risking the clownfish here, but at least it's contained to just this tank and not, or just this one fish in this tank. And of course the ones it's in quarantine with, and not, all my damsels or my green spotted puffer or something like that. And to kind of help with the process here, sorry, I did move a small piece of very established rock from my reef tank. Got all the feather dusters on it. It should be, it's been in that tank for like 2 years. So, even though the tank itself is coming along okay, right? We got algae everywhere. It's really starting to fill in a little bit in terms of, going through the nasties, as they're called. It does make me a little bit nervous to be adding this guy, but again, I don't want to end up losing him because I was too afraid to add him to the tank, if that kind of makes sense. So, hopefully, there's not going to be any issues, and hopefully, this will go smoothly. So, I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll update you guys once he's floating. Alright, so that actually wasn't too bad. It only jumped once, and it kind of just hit the lid. See, that's kind of what I'm worried about here, right? It's, as soon as I opened that lid, it was jumping, and luckily after that first hit, I think it was a little bit dazed, so it was pretty much just scoop and put it in the bag. It doesn't seem injured, like, surprisingly, with all the, sorry, I'm having to flip the camera in here, but with all the little jumps and stuff, it doesn't seem much worse for wear. I guess it makes sense. These guys are kind of streamlined. They're probably made to take that kind of hit. But I just didn't want it to come home and see it dried up in the floor, or like up between the acrylic and the glass top. Something like that. That didn't seem like a good time to me, right? So, for now, we're just going to do this. I'm going to watch the clownfish just to make sure there's no aggression going on. I've had this guy with other fish before. He's never been aggressive. I even had him with some guppies at one point. No problems. But where he was the first fish in here, I just want to make sure. I'll monitor it. I'll probably, because I have the same gap back here, right? I'll probably add in some acrylic or maybe some saran wrap or something for now, just to fix that. So we don't, so we're not out of the frying pan and into the fire, so to speak. But hopefully, we'll have a decent time here. So I'll update. Sorry, I got the hiccups. I'll update whenever I'm releasing it into the tank in about 10 minutes. Also, like take a moment to mention that I just had like a 5-minute panic attack because I realized that when I got in here, I didn't see the green clown goby. All right, usually he's sitting right down there, or sometimes he'll be kind of up under here, but I couldn't find him anywhere. So, I'm thinking maybe he jumped. Couldn't find anywhere where he could have jumped out at. I checked the filter. I checked the filter intake. I checked this other side to see if, maybe he had jumped over. I checked under. I could not find him. And then I kind of looked up under here. See if I can focus in here. It's not going to like it. Kind of see him there in the corner. Yeah, he found a new favorite hiding spot. Clown gobies are, if you've never kept one, you should. Like, especially the yellow clown gobies. The yellow clown gobies are awesome. I had one for 2 or 3 years. One of my favorite fish ever, especially for a fish that gets that big max. They have so much personality. They're a great fit for like, got like a 5-gallon tank. They're gonna be a good like centerpiece, right? The problem is that if you get one like this guy, they don't want to be anywhere near people. Like the yellow one that I had, he would like come up and perch in my hand. He would eat out of my hand. He would, if I was sitting at my desk, the tank was on my desk. He would, perch on the front glass just to watch me. Super personable. This guy is just not that way so far, and I'm hoping it's just a side effect of the tank, of the quarantine. But from what I've read, it's pretty common for them to just be super shy. But hopefully that guy comes around. He seems to be okay in terms of weight and stuff he eats. He just doesn't eat super well, but that's pretty common with clown gobies too. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. It took me a good 5 or 10 minutes to find him, and I've been sitting here freaking out. So yep, back to the firefish. All right, so before we release this guy, I did want to show. I did move that little piece of acrylic there, right? So I kind of covered that gap up. And then over here, on this other side, there really isn't a gap. There is like a 2 or 3 inch section right here. I'm gonna see if I can't find something to plug that with, but jumping risk should be pretty low, hopefully. I mean, now that I've said that, it's gonna jump out immediately, but hopefully not. But the temperature in the bag is the same as the tank. The salinity is pretty close. I mean, I keep all my marine tanks pretty close together. And even if they were kind of far apart, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Most fish, and even a lot of corals and inverts, it's not as important as people make it out to be. You probably should, but a lot of the times the stress of being in the bag or in the acclimation container is more than the actual change in salinity itself, right? So we're just gonna let this guy go here. Oh, see that jump? Yeah. Firefish are terrible for that kind of thing. Hopefully he goes down and not up. Yeah, go down. Now I want to close this lid as quick as I can here. Okay. Lid shut. And that's him in his new home. It's a decent sized tank. I mean, it's almost 40 gallons. It's a super tall tank, but that kind of works for this kind of fish, For like clownfish, firefish, the rural grandma, the blenny. They're going to make good use of all this real estate. And, maybe at some point I'll find a piece of rock or something that's going to fill up, real tall. That would be really nice. Because we just have a lot of unused space here. I thought about getting some of the magnetic rocks to kind of put on the back and the right hand side, but I'm not sure. But for now, we're just gonna watch this guy, make sure there's no aggression, and I'll chime back in here before bed and just let you know how things are going. All right, so it's been like 10 minutes, right? So it's not been nearly the couple hours I said it was gonna be, but I did want to kind of chime back in and mention something or clear up something that I think is going to be a big question mark. And that is, since I've already broken quarantine by adding this firefish into the tank, why wouldn't I go and add the other 2 fish from the quarantine tank into the display, right? I mean, if there's a disease, I probably transferred it in there with the firefish. It's not going to matter if the Blenny or the Grandma have something, because more than likely they've all been in the 10-gallon tank together for 8 or 9 days, so they probably all have it, right? The biggest thing for me is that this tank is still very young. It's not mature, and although I think I could handle it, I could do lots of water changes, I don't want to be putting the fish through that, right? So I've not seen any ammonia issues, right? Nitrite has been between 0 and 0.25, so it's been kind of bouncing back and forth. Nitrates have been, 20 to 40, and that's kind of what you would expect out of a cycling tank. Now, yes, nitrite is bad. 0.25 nitrite is bad, especially in saltwater tanks, but with the amount of algae that I've seen growing in this tank over the past couple of days, I don't expect there to be nitrate in this tank much longer. And then with me adding in this little chunk of rock, I think that should help also start processing that a little bit quicker. And then if I can flip myself around here, or flip the camera around, I've got this sponge here. I'm going to also move that from the quarantine tank because, again, I broke quarantine. So anything in here is now fair game in terms of using it in that tank. And then I guess I did technically break, or cross-contaminate rather, when I took that rock. Oh, it's really dark. Wow, okay, there we go. When I took that rock out of my reef tank, I kind of cross-contaminated there too. And it's a pair of captive red clowns that I've had for quite a while, so I don't think that there's any problems there. But if you want to get technical, yeah, some people would say that I've broken a lot of rules today, and I would agree. But fish keeping is as much of an art as it is a science, and you hear that a lot. But for me, that means that sometimes you got to go against the science and say, okay, well, even though it's going to be safer overall for me to just let this fish in here, leave this fish in this tank, and hope it doesn't jump out and kill itself, it might be worth taking the risk of putting it into a tank with one other fish in it, and hoping that it's not carrying anything after it's been healthy for, well, since the Thursday before last, right? So that's 11 days, not 8 or 9, it's 11. But, that and two, it is something that I consider, one thing I considered too when I made this decision is that, like, this clownfish has a very thick mucus coat, right? If for whatever reason it were to get ick or velvet or any external parasite, it's going to handle that much better than a lot of fish will. This goby has a very thick mucus coat because it is a goby, right? Not as thick as like a sand bed dwelling goby, but still rather thick compared to, let's say, a tang or an angelfish or something like that. The Grandma has a very thick slime coat, right? The Blenny is going to have a pretty thick slime coat. All the fish that are going to be going in here are super disease resistant. So, again, it's not that I want to be in a situation where I'm managing ick or managing a disease, but at the same time, if it's that or kill this fish by accident, right? Maybe the better scenario, in my opinion, is to deal with it and hope that it's never a problem. And the reality is that with this kind of fish, it may be like my 55 gallon over here, right? This tank, I have never seen a spot of ick on any of these fish that are living in here right now, but I do know that, like, I had a small angel in here before I had the damsels, right? It was just the clownfish, but I had a small angel in here just to grow out. That angel got ick, right? So, and it died in here, and I didn't quarantine or leave the tank fallow afterwards. So I know that there's ick in this tank. And I do my best not to cross-contaminate, I don't move fish or rock or anything. So I do my best to contain it to this tank, but this tank is infected. But because these are all damsels and clownfish with super thick slime coats, I never see ick. I do see the occasional flash, like you saw in yesterday's video. They'll scratch at their gills, but I never see any actual spots or anything like that. So, worst comes to worst, I guess it's another situation of this, where, I feed good food, I feed lots of it, and despite it being, an aggressive tank, I try to keep stress low. But, hopefully, it's not a problem either way. And, you know, wow, it's dark again. Me and that window are not getting along today. But hopefully it's not a problem. Hopefully it all works out. Hopefully I didn't just screw myself over. And I really will talk to you guys here about 9 or 10 o'clock and just report on how these guys are doing. Hey guys, just wanted to check in. It's been about 2 hours since I put the firefish in here, and everything's gone well so far. There hasn't been any aggression from the clownfish, right? It just kind of followed it around and checked it out for 5 or 10 minutes after that. There's been very little interaction. I did feed some baby brine about 30 minutes ago, so that's kind of what you're seeing them swim around, eat. So you can see it, they are eating, right? But yeah, I haven't seen any jumping other than when I first put it in the tank, so hopefully, you know, that's gonna help. And it seems less skittish. Like I can kind of walk up, and it might still back away, right? But it's not going nuts and diving into a hidey hole, right? I think it's just because, for one, the back and this side, on the right side over here, are blacked out, so that kind of encloses the space a little bit. And B, it's you got all this rock work in here, right? So there's holes for it to hide everywhere. Where in the quarantine tank, I mean, I think I did an okay job for the most part. I mean, I guess there's not really much of a job that I did. It's just, you know, pots and PVC. But I mean, most fish do okay with that. Like this grandma is just doing great. Like he's constantly out and about. He's brave. He's fat. Like, this is probably the healthiest royal grandma that I've ever seen come out of a local store here. I know that's something that a lot of people have tons of luck with, but here locally it's just hard to get healthy basslets. I don't know why, but it is. But anyway, that guy's just doing great. But I think that this is going to be a much better home. Hopefully, you know, the quarantine break doesn't come back to bite us, but we'll see. I think it'll be worth it as long as it pays off in the end. But yeah. Whoa, let's zoom out. That's not a good look. Oh, wrong way. You guys didn't want to see that. But yeah, that's it for me. You know, it's probably a 10-12 minute video on something that should have taken 2 minutes. But I just kind of want to show that sometimes going against what forums will say and going against what a lot of the internet will tell you is the right thing to do. This is kind of the more art part of the hobby rather than the science part, right? Scientifically, I could have just screwed myself 12 ways to Sunday. But at the same time, if I just save that fish's, you know, save that fish from a lot of stress, possibly saved its life, and then also didn't introduce disease into my display, it might pay off. But that's it for me today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all that crap if you like it. If not, tell me I can do better. And that'll be it for me.